call to order. The time is 7 p.m. Public portion of the meeting begins. The New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the rights of the public to have advance notice of, to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this Act, the Business Administrator, Board Secretary, has caused notice of this meeting to be published by giving the date, time, and place thereof, posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building, and communicated to the Herald News, the record, and filed with the clerk of the Borough of Hawthorne. Roll call, please.
Mr. Carr?
Here.
Mr. Clavijo? Ms. Arentron?
Here.
Dr. Morell? Mr. Palouse? Mr. Rasher?
Here.
Mr. Shortway? Mr. Totaro?
Here.
Mrs. Goff?
Here. Please join me for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Meeting regulations. During each regular meeting, 2 opportunities are provided for citizens to ask questions and to make comments. During the first opportunity, early on the agenda, the meeting is open to the public for the purpose of addressing items listed for approval on this agenda only. The second opportunity occurs just prior to adjournment, when citizens may address any subject matter that is pertinent to and/or directly related to the operation of the school district. Persons wishing to speak must, upon being recognized, rise, state their name, address, and subject matter. Comments and questions shall be addressed to the board president or the presiding officer and shall be limited to 5 minutes per person. The board may or may not respond to issues raised by members of the public at the time they are raised, but will provide a response if and when appropriate. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking. Please note that the board will not respond to comments regarding students or board employees in light of the privacy rights held by those individuals. Moreover, the board discourages comments about such individuals and will not be responsible for such comments. Members of the public who choose to speak during this public session should carefully consider their comments, since they could be held personally liable for any statements they make. Finally, please note that in accordance with the district policy, and the board will not officially comment on or respond to any matter mentioned unless it can confirm that the matter has first been brought to the attention of the appropriate school personnel in an attempt to resolve the issue. Public be heard, agenda items only. Seeing as no one is approached, approval of minutes, September 20th, 2022, regular meeting, public and private.
Motion. Second.
Motioned by Mr. Clavijo, seconded by Mr. Totaro. Roll call, please. Oh, any discussion? Sorry. Roll call, please.
Mr. Carr?
Yes.
Mr. Clavijo?
Yes.
Ms. Arentron?
Yes.
Mr. Rasher?
Yes.
Mr. Totaro?
Yes.
Mrs. Goff?
Yes. Correspondence. Our first student council report from Mr. Dewar.
Salutations and a happy Beartober to all. This is my second month and first appearance as this year's Board of Education representative. I apologize for my absence last month and am feeling significantly better after my bout of food poisoning. As stated so eloquently by Mr. Spirito in the previous board meeting, you will find summaries and segments of information provided directly from the staff at Hawthorne High School, as the Google form method of compiling this report proved to be massively successful, time-saving, and efficient for all. Feedback from staff at Hawthorne High School has been positive, and I will continue to do this monthly. So, without further delay, I present October's Board of Education report. The HHS Spanish Club and Spanish Honor Society would like to extend a warm thank you to all the members of the board for your continued support. Our pumpkin painting sale and apparel sale fundraisers were a tremendous success last Saturday at the Hispanic Heritage Celebration. We would also like to extend a deed of gratitude to our administrative team for their continued support and follow-through at HHS. We look forward to working closely with you as this year continues. The senior class cabinet is currently awaiting their senior shirt delivery. They actually got delivered yesterday. This was also used as a fundraiser for the senior class. The class cabinet members are currently working on hallway decorations for the hallway decorating contest for Spirit Week. The theme they voted for was Peter Pan. Students are currently selling wreaths as a fundraiser. Each student that sells 15 or more wreaths gets to go to the holiday dance for free. The senior class is hosting the holiday dance at Macaluso's on December 15th. If anyone on the board is interested in purchasing a wreath or a book, I'm your guy. The Creative Writing Club meets every Tuesday afternoon in the library. Members are currently working on a Twisted Tales writing contest. This contest is hosted by young writers, and contestants have the chance to win a $50 Amazon gift card. From school counseling, October 12, 2022, the PSAT NMSQT was administered to all 10th and 11th grade students free of charge. PSAT NMSQT provides valuable practice for the SAT, and it opens opportunities for scholarships and recognition. A lot of acronyms. Scores are typically available online 4 to 6 weeks after the test administration. Every year, the Student Council hosts Beartober. To kick off the month, they hosted the Fall Fest block party that was this past Wednesday, and massively successful. This included food trucks, a pumpkin painting station, a petting zoo, DJ, and a pie throwing station. Special thanks to Ms. Russo, the Stuco Exec Board, and all the custodians and staff for making it happen. We look forward to next week's Spirit Week, hallway decorating, and homecoming festivities. And this week is Spirit Week. I hope that explains my appearance. Our sports teams and marching band are approaching the end of their fall seasons. We hope all team members and marchers enjoy the 2022 season, and we wish a farewell to our seniors on those teams. This month, our library welcomes Ms. Erin Hestevic, an intern from William Patterson University, doing her fieldwork for school library certification. Highlighting the diversity of the high school library collection, this month the library books and displays highlight National Hispanic Heritage Month, National Italian American Month, and Indigenous Peoples Day. To reinforce the role of the library in providing diverse resources, Mrs. DiGeronimo has joined the Diversity Alliance Committee and will attend their first meeting of the school year this week. This month, Library Media Specialist Mrs. DiGeronimo presented a program called Is It Credible? To all our freshmen. This lesson gave our new students an introduction to the basics of information literacy in the digital age. To keep up to date on the latest in information literacy education, Mrs. DiGeronimo will attend a webinar on October 18th entitled News Literacy, sponsored by the News Literacy Project. Continuing the library's outreach to our students, Mrs. DiGeronimo and Ms. Hestevic will meet with freshman English classes at the end of this month and introduce research skills as they prepare for their first high school research project. In October, Mrs. DiGeronimo is meeting with each of our new teachers to explain the many ways the library can support their lessons and their students. This concludes this month's Board of Education report. Thank you all for making these wonderful events possible and for the opportunities. This month's historical quote to conclude the report is, "In the end, it's not the years left in your life that count, it's the life left in your years." Abraham Lincoln was a smart man. Thank you all and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much. For those of my fellow board members who don't have a high schooler, could you just share today's theme?
Today's theme was barbecue dad versus soccer mom. And I'm a band dad.
There are many funny pictures posted on Facebook and on Instagram if you don't follow the HHS Bears pages. Additionally, StuCo is Student Council and HOCO is Homecoming, because apparently the other words are too long, just so everyone is aware. Thank you so much, Paul. And I would like a wreath, so don't leave before I get one from you. Superintendent's report, Mr. Splito.
All right, thank you very much. So just to comment on a couple of the items that Paul mentioned, a lot of exciting things happening at the high school as we start the year. This month especially, we've had numerous different events going on throughout the week, Week of Respect, School Violence Awareness Week, as well as this week being Spirit Week, which concludes with homecoming on Friday night, our homecoming football game, so we look forward to that. It's also Cubs Appreciation Night, I believe, on Friday, so it's going to be a busy night, a lot of activity down at the high school field. But it's great to see all of our activities and programs back in full effect, this year, so we're excited about that, and especially excited that our students get to participate in all these great events. So thanks, Paul, for sharing that. A couple other things I would like to share tonight. First of all, I want to just comment that as we ended the month of September and began October, we had great back-to-school nights and a great open house at the high school. Appreciate everybody who attended those events. They were very well attended. Our open house went very well. We appreciate our students who provided tours to the attendees, and we also held the community open house in October as well. So we're excited to provide those opportunities for our parents and our community members. I also want to just mention that our final strategic planning session, we've completed 2 of the 3 sessions. We have one left scheduled for Tuesday, November 1st in room 123. at Hawthorne High School at 7 o'clock p.m. We are back to 7 o'clock. I know we jumped to 6 for the last one, but this new one, or this next upcoming one, is on 7 o'clock. And this will be the final session of our 3 strategic planning sessions, so hopefully parents will be able to join us for that last session. In terms of things happening throughout the district, during the month of October, we celebrate two different weeks. One's called the Week of Respect, that's required as part of the HIV law, and one known as School Violence Awareness Week. So during the Week of Respect, there are activities that take place in all of our schools, and those activities resolve around resolving conflict peacefully, managing anger. It includes presentations from staff, from some community groups. So we have some outside speakers. There are fun activities as part of these weeks, academic activities as well. And those academic pieces focus on things like respect, responsibility, cooperation, faith in yourself and others, and much more. That's the Week of Respect. In terms of School Violence Awareness Week, those activities are geared toward the awareness and prevention of school violence and bullying. They also include assemblies and different programs that are run not only by our own staff, but some outside presenters as well. Also, to go along with that, at this time during the year, we are required to do what's considered to be a self-assessment in all of our individual schools to determine our grade under the HIV, or harassment, intimidation, and bullying law. I'm just going to share the report that was submitted on behalf of our school district. So, as I said, during the month of September, the administrators and their school safety teams, they meet in their buildings to complete what's considered to be a self-assessment of their building's programs, initiatives, and procedures for investigating and reporting. The self-assessment process includes the gathering of documents and evidence to provide those ratings for each school. There are 8 core elements that are evaluated. It includes HIV programs, approaches, other initiatives, training, staff instruction, curriculum and instruction on HIV and related information and skills, personnel, HIV personnel, school level HIV incident reporting procedures, investigation procedures, and HIV reporting. And each of those areas, there are ratings, and then you, in that self-assessment, a score is provided for each school. So what I can share, I'm happy to share, that all 5 of our buildings scored above the 50 points required to meet all the state requirements in this area. These scores reflect, well, I'll just quickly tell you that the scores for our schools: Jefferson scored 69, Roosevelt 76, Washington 73, Lincoln Middle School 66, and the high school 67. These scores reflect an improvement in Roosevelt, Washington, Lincoln, and the high school, and the maximum score that can be achieved in any building is 78, just to give you an idea. So overall, as a district, our score is 70, which is a slight improvement from last year's rating. In terms of our plans for this year and areas that we're targeting to improve, so we're continuing our training for all staff and students on our policies, our reporting procedures, as well as preventative strategies for students and parents throughout the district. And we're going to be offering programs throughout the school year to accomplish this. Staff will also continue to be offered training through our Safe Schools program and receive training from our anti-bullying specialists in each building. Anti-bullying initiatives include the Week of Respect, Violence Prevention Week, and Red Ribbon Week, which will be celebrated in each building. Also, we're going to be working to increase communication, training, support, and guidance for all of our anti-bullying specialists. And we're going to be implementing a new program called Hipster this year, which will help to just collate and organize the information provided as part of these HIV incidents. We also continue to have the West Bergen clinicians who will support our students and address any issues of bullying and peer conflict. Okay, so that is our HIV report that is required under the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights. Also, each year we are required to report something that called the Violence, Vandalism, Substance Abuse, and Weapons Offense Report. It's called the Student Safety Data System Report, but it includes, as I mentioned, violence, vandalism, substance abuse, weapons offenses, HIV, so on and so forth. There are typically 2 reporting periods, September to December and January to June. Tonight, I'm actually going to be reporting on the overall numbers from the 21-22 school year. So during the school year last year, we had 9 total incidents, 2 incidents of violence, which typically, when we talk about violence, those are typically, could be something as simple as a fight or a threat. To give you an idea, we had no incidents of vandalism, no incidents of substance abuse, 1 incident of a weapon, and 6 confirmed HIVs. So we had, again, 9 total incidents for this school year. And again, that report is required that we share those numbers and that information each year with the board and with the public. All right. And that is all I have, but what I would like to do now is turn it over to Dr. Trebona, who's going to share another piece of reporting that we're required to do each year, which is our district testing report for the schools.
Hi, everybody. We haven't been here in a while, which you'll see in a minute, for this testing report. So it's going to look a little different this year than it has in the past for those of you who have been up on the board and have seen some of these reports. And I'll pause and stop and go through the different points where differences may come out. But basically, New Jersey requires a set of assessments to be taken both for all students and then for certain subsets of students based on their academics, based on their language acquisition, and based on their special education status. The mainstream test, or the one that most of our students take, is the NJSLA, or New Jersey Student Learning Assessment, in English, math, and science. That's offered. That is what, the English and the math is what is used for the graduation requirement that students need in order to graduate high school. A new test that came out last year was called the New Jersey GPA, or Graduation Proficiency Assessment. That was administered to our 11th grade students. I'll discuss that a little bit more. That is where they're going back towards, if anybody remembers that HESPA model, where there's only 1 test you need to take to pass, and there's 1 part of it in ELA, 1 part of it in math. We also have our DLM, which is our dynamic learning maps. That is a subset of basically the learning standards in New Jersey pared down for our severely special ed population. It's normally about 1% of our special ed population that are taking this test, and it's basically meeting their individualized learning targets that are created through their IEPs. And then we have the Access for ELS, which is our English language learners, which is shifting, and now they're going to be called our MLLs, which is our multilingual language learners. So we're going to shift from saying L's to MLLs. I'm not really sure what that's going to be called. But the purpose of tonight is to look at, really the first question is key here. How does this data serve as a baseline for growth post-pandemic? Normally in these presentations, we're taking the current data, we're looking at it compared to previous students in that grade level to look at trends, and we're also following students in cohort and seeing how they progress through the years. Since we have not tested students since 2019, officially, we don't have any data to compare. But we do have all this data which we know we can use, so we're putting this as an administrative team as our baseline. What is this telling us for our learning of achieving the standards post-pandemic at each grade level? We also want to look at how we did compared to the state scores. Where do we compare among the state? And we want to look at what are our strengths, and then what are the skills that we are going to need greatest improvement on. I know this gets a little tiny, but this is all, the presentation will be posted on the website after, and I know the board members have this in the folder if they need to see it. As I mentioned, the 2022 assessment was the first one that was administered since 2019. Kids took NJSLA in grades 3 through 9 for ELA, 3 through 8 for math, and if you were enrolled in Algebra 1 or Geometry in grade 10, and then science, they take it in grade 5, grade 8, and grade 11. The NJ GPA I put in blue because our current seniors, last year's junior, took the inaugural NJ GPA test in March. They had 2 sessions of it. There was an ELA, there was a math. That was told to be the graduation requirement in the menu. That was going to be their PARC or their NJSLA because they didn't have one their freshman and sophomore year due to COVID. The scores initially came out in June for those. The state then retracted them, adjusted scores, not individualized, but more just cohort scores for the schools, came out in October, so they were included in this report. And in July of 2022, Governor Murphy passed a bill which said that this was not field tested enough, this test, so couldn't be used as a graduation requirement. So he then retracted any graduation requirement for the class of 2023. So they don't have any of those requirements, so there will be no portfolio appeals, there will be no menu of pathways. We're still waiting on guidance from that. Moving forward, our students in 11th grade will be taking this test, but as far as we know, in the 2024 and 2025 school year, it will not be used as a graduation requirement, or it can be used in the a la carte menu as one of the choices to graduate. And then students in grades 5, 8, and 11 participated in the science test. The science test, we have to administer the science test federally. That's a federal requirement, but it's not a state requirement for graduation. So we have a lot of requirements and moving along. What I want to hone in here is we're taking this set of data as one of multiple data points that we as administrative team are using. This is not an end-all be-all, especially post-pandemic. We have learned many different sources of data to gather to follow the trends and align with our students. So teachers are using our own benchmarks that we make internally aligned to our curriculum. We have the Start Strong, which was just administered, which is a state kind of benchmark for students. When they come in September, they take a test to kind of see some summer learning loss and see where they have mastered in the previous grade level. We have our internal universal screener of Renaissance Star 360. We also use district grades, classroom data. So we are not taking one individual data point to say whether a student is meeting or achieving or on track to graduate. And I think that's really important to know that we send these scores home, and yes, there's graduation, but we're tracking kids on multiple measures. Teachers and administrators are also collaboratively kind of looking at student performance and taking teacher data, administrative teams, and we're looking at trends, and we're trying to refine programs and figure out like where is our performance goals going to be based on information from the teachers and discussions we're having. When we get into the NJSLA data, what you realize is every one of the tests I gave on there is scored in a different format. So anything NJSLA, ELA, math, and science are scored on a 1 through 5 scale, where 1 through 3 are basically you're approaching meeting a standard, and 4 or 5 is where you meet or exceed that standard. For the goal of kids is to achieve a 4 or 5, technically on the ones that as they progress through their school year until they get up to, say, 9th, 10th, 11th grade, when those are the ones for graduation requirement. The first set of data that I show you here is looking at the percentage of our students. Hawthorne is blue. I've learned in my 5 years here. The state is green. I've changed my colors. So as you'll see here, what we're doing is we're comparing the percentage of the students in each of the grade levels that achieved a 4 or a 5, meaning they are at or above proficiency, compared to the state. So this is ELA. As you can see, except for an anomaly in 6th grade, we outperform the state in our ELA scores. So that's showing that we have around 40 to 50% of our students, upwards in 7th grade, 60% of our students, right now meeting or exceeding the standards in the ELA grades. That's awesome. 7th grade continually, this jumping back to 2019, stands out for us as one of our highest strengths. And we're still digging in to see what's going on there that's working. We kind of got a little messed up with COVID there, but we're trying to figure out why that continually stands out as we highly outperform the state in that. What this data tells us is that we're on track. We're doing good here. We're going to be looking, do we have room for improvement? Yes, we always have room for improvement. But what we're doing is working, and we need to chip away and we want to continue to grow our own 4 and 5s to outperform and get more of that percentage of students just meeting and exceeding the standards. This breaks it down a little into some subsets. We look at males versus females. It's pretty consistent here as it is. We look at our economically disadvantaged students that are scoring above or at or above the expectations. We're looking at our student with disabilities. That continues to be an area of growth for us because These students, we have some students who are in our resource or LLD classes who are sitting for the same exam that their peers in a regular or honors class are sitting at. So it is our jobs as educators to really work on how can we give them exposure to these questions, exposure to these skills to meet that same standard with only limited modifications and accommodations that they may have in a testing environment that may not match what they have in a classroom environment. So that's an area that we continue to look on. We're working with the CST teams, we're working with our special education staff to really figure out how we can increase those numbers for those populations. But we still have 17% of our third graders with special needs who right off the bat were able to pass or exceed the standard. So we're in the right trend here. Again, our L's, look at 7th grade. I do not get it. Even our English language learners, 25 of them exceeded the standards in the score. So again, it stands out, and I will figure out why someday. I will come back to you on that one. Math is pretty similar. The difference with math is here we're going to see a little bit difference. We have third through 8th grade takes math. 8th grade is split, where we have a subset of students who are advanced. They take Algebra 1 in 8th grade. So our Algebra 1 scores combine our 8th grade and our 9th grade students. And then we have geometry, which includes some 9th grade geometry students and some 10th grade geometry students. That's why we differentiate it by course and not by grade level. This continues to be an area that we struggle in. This continues to be an area that we have to work and figure out how we're going to continue the improvement there and how we're going to track some prerequisite fluency skills to make up for some gaps. Now, as you can see in here, in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, in 3rd grade and 4th grade, we do outperform the state in math. Slightly, but we outperform them. Once we hit 5th grade, we're slightly below the state. As you can see, as we get into some higher level math courses or up into the more difficult math courses where you're looking into pre-algebra, algebra, and geometry, our gap between the state and our proficiency scores is lower. Some of the justification or rationale behind this post-pandemic is the idea that the gap of learning loss in the upper grades was harder to spiral in while teaching new content than it was in 3rd and 4th grade. So when we're trying to in 3rd grade, when we're introducing multiplication, our fluency that we have to pick up and work on from 2nd grade is fluent addition and subtraction. That's easier for a student to learn in 3rd grade as they're learning multiplication and overcome that gap or that learning loss. When we're going into something like Math 8 or Math 7, we're talking about words like functions and algebraic expressions, things that they've never heard of. So to learn a lost grade level while learning a new grade level really is why you see a significant drop in the upper grade levels rather than the lower grade levels. But again, we know it's an area that we need to work on. It's something that we as a team are working on, and I'll share some of the things we're doing with that. Again, with our subsets, we have male, female, economically disadvantaged, students with disabilities. Here, our outliers for our ELLs are our grade 4 and our grade 6. Normally, we tend to see more ELL students be proficient in math because numbers are numbers, and that helps us a lot. We have a lot of ways of assessing our Ls when they come into the district where we can administer some of our universal screeners for math in their native language, which helps us give a sense of where are they in their knowledge, not in their language acquisition. That's harder to do on the ELA scale than not. When we look at our GPA data, now this is a little different. We're not on a 1 to 5 scale. They told us with our adjusted cohort data, we just have graduation ready, graduation not ready. So they literally broke it out into 2 things. So if we look at our ELA data, we have 36.7% of our junior class were considered graduation ready for ELA. That came out to about 47 students out of about 190 something tested. In math, it was a little lower, like we know that. We are below the state in this. Some factors that may contribute to this is You had juniors who were taking a test that had not taken a test. You had juniors that had already met their a la carte graduation requirements from PSAT scores, SAT scores, ACT scores, ASVAB and stuff like that. So to them, this test wasn't needed as a graduation requirement. So the data isn't pure here. We don't know a true trend of it was a first test, we don't have data to compare it to, and we have kids who knew that they didn't need it to graduate, so was it taken with fidelity? And again, that was across the state, and that was what Governor Murphy kind of came from. When we look at these three subsets, these are our main tested areas that are needed for graduation. We have to say that we looked at the percentage of students that hit a 4 or a 5 or were graduation ready, but what are we doing with those subsets that are not? How are we going to get those 1, 2s, and 3s up to that level? At the elementary level, we have been very, very successful with our data and our multisensory reading program, which we are in the 2nd year of implementation. We have 5 specialists across the elementary schools who are servicing over 170 of our 2nd through 5th grade students who have severe reading fluency issues. So we're basically taking the kids who are struggling readers and we're doing intensive individual or group work 2 to 3 times a week with them. We're pulling them out and we are going back to the basics with that. We restructured our BSI program to support this, to really have a push-in approach where we always say the more teachers that we have in a classroom who are certified, bodies are better than programs. We put our teachers in there. You are now taking your class ratios down from a 1 to 20 ratio, 1 to 10 once I put a 2nd teacher in there. So if I have an ELA lesson, I'm having a BSI grade level teacher push in. I have 2 teachers now for 20 students teaching a writing lesson that is a lot better on our conferencing, on our reading comprehension and things like that. We trained all of our K-5 staff were offered the ability to be trained during the summer in Phonics First if they had not been trained by us already, since we have a newer staff. They took a 30-hour intensive course over the summer. It was offered multiple times, and they are now all fully trained in implementing our Phonics First program, which is our early reading program. We also had our multisensory reading instructors do what's called pacing guides. So what you will see now is if you have elementary kids, your elementary students, what they're learning in their phonics course in Phonics First is going to align to their spelling words because it's going to have the same rules and going to align to what sight words are coming. So what we were noticing is there was a disconnect between spelling lists and there was a disconnect between sight words for our younger kids, and it turned into a lot of memorizing and not learning in terms of words. So what we've done was we've given our teachers pacing guides to say if Phonics First is teaching the magic E, then our spelling list should be composed of most of the rules that have the magic E and rules we've already learned. So that when they're studying those words, they're studying them based on their learning to read them, they're not just memorizing what letters make up a word. It's too early for us to see how that's impacted, but it's something that the elementary administrative team is looking. We've also increased the instructional minutes in K through 2 by putting in addition to the 120 minutes of ELA, we have a 30-minute identified phonics instructional period, which is super important because that means we're teaching them how to read, and then we're going into the reading lesson, and it's not that we have to take away from the reading lesson in teaching them how to read. And then we have some programs. In our middle school, we really rely on our data team, and we added an academic coordinator there who's really working with our BSI teachers and our data team to use the data for both classroom instruction as well as some of our internal assessments to track standards in a standards-based assessment way where we look at particular standards with kids and target the instruction. We put them into the language labs, and now we know exactly where. We're also making ownership for the kids where they are using their own data and using their own test data to look for set goals for themselves as they do something called progress monitoring. We adopted a program called Learning Ally because one of the biggest things that they tell you in the research is that reading shouldn't impede comprehension. So Learning Ally is a program where all students have the ability to audio listen to a book in order so that reading does not or listen as they read along, so that the act of reading doesn't impede their comprehension and how they understand what's going on. Because if they can't read, they can't answer the comprehension questions. But if we read it to them and they understand it, that's a different measurement, and that's what we want to break, that barrier. We also have continued to contract with Gravity Goldberg, which we have done pre-pandemic, who are literacy consultants that come in. And this isn't just on PD days, but they come in and they coach. So they observe our teachers, they coach our teachers, and then they'll debrief with our teachers. They'll model lessons for our teachers. So it's a dynamic throughout the year contract. We're doing that at the high school as well. In the high school, we also put a study skills course. So we are able to target certain students and put them in a smaller environment where they are then taught how to prepare themselves, how to work on close reading, how to hone in on their writing skills, all which are so needed at that level in a remediated fashion. And again, there is the idea of the instructional data teams and our NJTSS, which is our New Jersey Tiered System of Supports, or our RTI model. These are very similar interventions in math. We have our universal screeners, we have our restructured BSI. We continue the cohort model of making sure all our teachers are trained in the Conquer Mathematics K through 12. What that does is it takes what everybody's calling the new math, and it teaches them how to use it in a manipulative way. So it makes it more relevant to them, and it shows them that there's more one way to solve a problem, and you can solve it either quantitatively, you can solve it through modeling, you can solve it through drawing, or you can solve it through representation. And on these assessments, there's more than one way to answer the question, and that's what the research has shown makes kids successful. It's not just one way of learning for this. So Conquer Mathematics is teaching our teachers how to show the kids these different processes. We have done curricular revisions and programs evaluations. What we continue to do with our pacing guides, K through 12, is we are looking at we build pacing guides, and then we have teams of teachers reflect on them throughout the year. Then we go back over the summer, we revise our pacing guides, and we come back to it. So it is that constant feedback looping model, K through 12. Again, at the middle school and high school, we have our math lab course and our study skills course. We have our academic coordinator, who again is helping the teachers and helping us sift through the data and really figure out where do we need to target students. The high school this year has implemented what they call the Comprehensive System of Supports team, and what that team is doing is that team is involving both guidance, supervisors, administrators, some teachers, child study team, and each week they meet for 1 hour and they look at different children who are struggling, and they figure out interventions that they can go back to the teachers and say, what can we do for this kid? And basically they're going through all the students at the high school that are in dire need of this, and they have an intensive conversation of 3 to 4 students an hour each week, and then they move on to the next group. And they're doing it based on need. So far that has been very successful. We're tracking data with this to see if this is something that we may want to bring down to lower grades, but it's being piloted and implemented by Mr. Pfister up at the high school. Science data is my favorite. I was a science teacher. Here we don't score in ready or not ready or 1 through 5. We decide to score 1 through 4. Not really sure why. But 3 and 4 here are the good ones. So 3 and 4 are meeting and exceeding. What's nice about the science test is the science test is more skills-based. It's giving students a lot of graphs, a lot of data, a lot of scenarios to answer questions rather than asking them particular science-based questions. This is preparing them for more of that mindset of the ACT, which is that critical thinking type atmosphere. Our students, again, I have 2 8th grade students. I know that they don't take this test seriously because it doesn't mean anything, and we know that that happens sometimes. Our scores are below the state average. Again, it's something that we're digging into. We had just revised our K-12 science curriculum. We adopted a new program, K-5, and we have designed we have taken what's called Inner Orbit as an assessment model for 6 through 12. And what that does is that is an interactive program that teachers can use to build assessments that model this. So that what's happening is our students now, when they're taking their science test in biology or in 6th grade science, it's going to model questions like this rather than the teacher-driven test, which is a disconnect. So we're hoping that that will help us see gains in the future for that. As I mentioned earlier, we have the dynamic learning maps, which is the special education students with significant challenges participate in this alternate assessment. This is basically students in our STEPS and our ARCH program, which is our most severe program within the district. We had 15 students who took this test. They take modules of it, and they take it in both language arts, math, and science. Being that we only had 15 students who took this test, I can't report out on the data, because in each subset or grade level, there's less than 10, and when we report out on the data, the state feels that it can be identifiable. Meaning if I only have 2 kids in 3rd grade that took the test and I report out on that, then we know who those 2 kids are. So I'll give you some grade bands. We gave students tests in grades 3 and 4, we had 7 students, 6 through 8, we had 6 students, we had no 5th graders, and in grade 11, we had 2 students. What you do have to know is that this data is used on an individualized basis with the child study team, the case manager, and the teacher or teachers. So they're looking at this as they're revising IEPs, as they're setting goals and objectives, and as they're looking at future placement for students. The Special Services Department is looking at holistic data of this compared to what curricular programs we use on that level, because our curricular programs on that level is the only level that is different from our standard curriculum, and what type of trials and discrete trials that we're doing with our students on that level. And we also use that for IEP review and implementation. The last test, again, in our subgroup that it makes it difficult for me to report on is our Access for Ls. Even though we had 71 students within the district take that, when you look at any one grade level, we had less than 10 students. So I cannot report out individually by grade level, but let me tell you a little bit. So the Access for Ls is scored 1 through 6. We have another one. It goes basically from emerging, approaching, at, advanced, essential, or growing. So basically on a 1 through 6 scale, a student will test out of the ESL program at a 4.5. The reason I gave you the score of a 4.0 or higher is that if a student scores between a 4.0 and a 4.4 in the spring, continues in their program, in the fall we can give them what's called the WIDA model. If they again score a 4 or higher, they can exit that out of the program. That means that between the 2 tests, they have enough essential knowledge to do that. So our target score that we look at is that 4 rather than the 4.5. We did have a subset of students exit the program this year, but we had 4 students exit based on hitting that 4.0 on the state exam, and then being able to show their proficiency has continued to grow over the summer and into the fall and meet that standard for the model. So we have just updated all of that. But what you'll see is, I think if we go back to 2019, my total number of L's was in the 40s, and we are now in the 70s, and we are continually growing. And this is a subset in this population that we're continually growing. And what we're growing at is we're growing at immigrant students who are first time to the US, first time schooling a lot. So I can take one of our schools last week alone, had 5 students register Thursday and Friday, 2 from Ecuador, 2 from Colombia, and 1 from the Dominican Republic, all first time US residents, all elementary level, all first time school in various grade levels. That's the type of challenges, mountains that we're working with. So now we're trying to really dig down and say, what are our programs doing and what can we do to do this? One of the things that we've done to tackle this is we added an ESL teacher at Washington and Lincoln, the 2 schools that hired our highest populations. We use title funding to fund that in those 2 schools. We've also added some non-instructional aides in Washington School that are bilingual. They are becoming a extreme resource just in communicating with parents and communicating with some of these kids who come in and are sitting in the classroom and our teachers are having trouble. Just some basics like, what do you need? What can I help you with? I will tell you that our teachers are great. I was at a Title I meeting yesterday, and some of our teachers at Washington were asking if we could bring in people once a week, maybe to teach them just conversational Spanish, which I'm going to look into with some of our title funds, because they're to the point where they want to just be able to communicate with these cherubs that are in their classrooms that they just feel so lost that they can't. So it's something that I am now looking into as another service, because when a child's comfortable, they're going to be more comfortable to learn. We've also restructured our ELL program in terms of, we used to do all pull-out model, where we would pull them out for their ESL period and their reading period. In the K2 model, with our emphasis on phonics, we're doing a pull-out model for one, but we're having our ESL teachers and some of our multi-sensory reading instructor teachers push in to the particular classes where the L's are, because we feel like if a kindergarten is learning letters and reading and sound, that is the best place for our English language learners to learn, because at 5 years old, their language acquisition should come quicker than when it's older. So the challenge becomes when you're in middle and high school. Next steps. We know as a district, we're finally getting our momentum back post-COVID, and we know where we have to go, and we're working on getting there. We want to continue to utilize our district-wide initiative of really honing in on the NJTSS model and RTI model, which is really the way of the future right now. That's the way the special ed is going with stuff in the legislative, and that's where we're really going to have to focus. We're utilizing data teams, but what's nice about our data teams now is we're bringing the teachers on board with them. We have data teams at the elementary level that kind of travel between schools, and then we're meeting with grade level teams to hone in. Our PD day for elementary on November 8th is literally going to be analyzing individual student data and aligning our data in standards to particular students and saying, okay, does this match? What do you see in your classroom with Johnny when Johnny's sitting there? But Johnny's scoring this, why? And these are the discussions that we have to foster. And I think our future programming and professional development in all these areas are going to align to our new strategic plan that we're developing. We know in terms of teaching and learning and instruction where we want to go, and we have to figure out how our means of we're going to get there. This is a continual process. It's not an easy process. It's a hurdle, but if I say that the staff in this district are rolling up their sleeves post-pandemic and they want to get there, they want to get these kids back to where they are. Told you to be quick tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Tribona. I mean, I miss these presentations.
Thank you.
I would also like to share for the board and for the public that despite everyone in the world acknowledging there is a learning loss caused by the pandemic, the testing gurus have not modified the tests in any way. They have for 2 years in a row taken baseline data under the name of Start Strong, and they do not use that data to then modify the test to meet the students where they are. So you are looking at test data that's given based on standards that, in my opinion, are no longer accurate. So that, I just want to caution everyone that, I think the false assumption is, but they modified they didn't. They are not modified in any way. They didn't take the data that they gathered last year, and it's the same company that did Start Strong that offers these tests, and they did not utilize it. It's a major problem. It's a major, major problem. Dr. Tribona agrees. I know she probably wants to say that, but I can say it because it's just frustrating. As a case manager myself, I mean, it's frustrating to not react when we know there was an issue, and to continue to hold kids to a standard that they're just not there, and it's not their fault. It's not the teacher's fault. It's not the district's fault. I don't know if it's going to change, to be honest, but it just should be noted. The standards have not changed. The curricular standards have not changed. The tests have not changed. I will hop down off my soapbox now. Thank you again for all of your work.
Any questions? There's not much of a question.
If I may, thank you again, Dr.
No
Giroux.
problem.
Just out of curiosity, I know you said some things about what's going to be done on the ELA side, but in regards to mathematics, is there any changes to the structure specifically to try and improve those test grades?
So our first line of defense, it's one of those things where we're still trying to unpack where the problem is to get like our root cause for why do we have this learning gap and why is it going bigger. One of the things that we're going back to, and I think this is just good practice, is exposure to the test. And I don't want to say that we're going to be doing test prep and we're going to be teaching to the test, but I think we went with the whole shift to these electronic tests and to these ideas that these tests are out there and they're skill-based and they're they're a little different. We lost sight of that for a while in giving students exposure to that prior to that, and we stuck to our curriculum. So what we're doing now is really looking at how can we infuse what's going to be on the test and just accessibility of doing an online assessment in math. If I'm going to be taking it in the spring in 3rd grade online, then every assessment I'm taking in math from September to May should be online. So that's one of the things that we're shifting. Our students were not taking online assessments and benchmarks 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, but we were expecting them to sit at the end of the day and take it on the thing, on the state test where we're reporting out on it. The other thing that we're looking at for this is how do we spend a lot of time, and we learned this post-pandemic, we used to say like, we need to get through everything, and is it a battle of do we get through everything or do we master this? And our teachers are so passionate that they don't want to move on until all 23 little cherubs have mastered this. That has shown to not be best practice, where exposure is better than mastery. So what we've learned now is that through these pacing guides and through some of our restructured BSI, is that we want to make sure we give exposure to as many topics as possible. And then what we're doing is we're really using our tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 to differentiate out. And what that means is my tier 1 is the regular classroom teacher teaching everything to the whole group. Everybody gets that good instruction. My tier 2 is I have students that might be close to mastering but not, so I need to pull them out when we're doing group work, when we're doing centers, and I need to readjust that and I need to target it in a specific way. So now I'm looking at it, giving them exposure, but now in a smaller group setting in tier 2, I can have my BSI teacher or my classroom teacher or my interventionist come in and push in. In the middle and high school, that's my lab students. And then we go to our tier 3 where we say, I've given exposure, but there is still a major gap here. And that's where I say, Mr. Totaro, you're doing really good. I'm going to keep you in there for math, but then once a week during social studies, I'm going to pull you out because I really need you to learn the math. And now you're going to work in a group of 1 or 2. And I'm going to drill it with you. So that's where we're starting to restructure how we approach it. But we really need to make sure we give exposure out there so that when a kid gets there and they're taking that test in spring and they're doing fractions in 4th grade, but we don't do fractions until we master multiplication and division, if we don't get to ever seeing a fraction, the kid's not even gonna know how to answer it. But at least if they know that the answer might be a fraction, oh, I've seen that could be a choice.
Is that effective immediately, essentially?
Yes. Yes, like that has been like a drop everything, and we're redesigning we spent Monday, October 10th, K through 5, totally redesigning our common math benchmark assessments, means our unit assessments in every unit, K through 5 now are consistent across the board. They're going to be administered online, except in kindergarten and 1st grade, they won't be online until, I believe we said January, February, we're going to start them working on the iPads for it. But again, it was kind of like, we need to stop now and fix. So we couldn't wait a whole year to figure that out. And we're continuing to adjust on the fly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tabona. It's the lack of uniformity with the scoring is confusing, right? I mean,
Well, that just shows you some of the inconsistency of not understanding, is that every single test that I just described has a different scale to rate on. Even the GPA, if anybody follows like legislative and news, back in, I believe it was like last April when they first came out with this test, the normal passing score is around a 725. Again, nobody really knows what 725 means because I think you start at a 550. So again, it's very arbitrary in what these actual scaled scores mean. But for NJSLA, grade 9, grade 10, we wanted a 725, but they wanted to make the grade 11 test a 750. Again, for no reason, and there was a lot of pushback with that. So that's one of the challenges we have, is not understanding where the scoring is coming from. So again, it's kind of like you're working with a moving target, and a target of, okay, I have this hat on, I'm on a 5-point rubric, I'm on a 4-point rubric, I'm on a 2-point rubric, I'm ready, I'm not ready.
And then you fill out college applications and it's test optional.
Yes.
Test score doesn't even matter at that point, so it's all over the place. On the L's, I was, back in the days, it was ESL, so I was one of those kids, I was a 4th grader. from Ecuador, knew no
You just sat there and
English,
smiled or
but
cried.
I had great math scores. My math scores were, they carried me all the way through college at that point.
See? Great.
We had a pull-out model at that point, right? So what I was gonna ask is, it seems that that's gonna continue to be the trend for Hawthorne, right?
So we have both. So what we're doing right now is based on what we've done now is the minute we have somebody come in, we administer what's called the WIDA screener. So within the first 2 weeks of a student entering us, if their home language survey and some of the data tells us that they are going to be an English language learner, we have one of our ESL teachers administer what's called the WIDA screener. That's going to give them a score in reading, writing, listening, and speaking. That gives them a composite score which ranks them. Based on where they go on, again, a 1 through 6 model, on that tells us which program we're going to put them in. Are we going to put them in an intensive where they have 2 pullouts? Are we going to put them in an intensive where they have 1 pullout but then they have 1 multisensory with our OG teachers? Or are we going to put them in a fusion where they're in a double where the ESL teacher pushes in for double period because they have a 4 or a 5 and it's better to keep them immersed. So it's really, we're starting to really individualize the program to meet the different needs because it's not a one-size-fits-all right now.
And I'm not sure, I was a kid, not sure what model they followed at that point at the school I went to. I went to school in Patterson, but it worked, right? Because 5th grade, my grades were straight A's at that point, all the way through. So then being that the trend in Hawthorne seems to be that, we're gonna have a lot more M's, right, ML,
yeah, I'm not really sure.
Does it make sense to touch base with other districts that maybe have, more experience with it for best practices?
So one of the things that we're doing, which I'm hoping will be, is we partnered with, it's called LAM, again, it's acronyms, it's the Language Literacy Assessment people. It's BJ Frank, she's known around the state. She's actually coming to Hawthorne for 3 days in March, where she's going to pull out our 6 through 12 teachers that have the majority of L's to teach them how to do content level instruction. She's then going to, the following school year, work with our K-5 model to say when you have that student in there. So we're just starting to infuse more of the PD to our regular education teachers, since we know that it's everybody's job. It's a village that we need to embrace these students. So that's where we're starting, and we're hoping that that will give us, and yes, we got that from 2 of our neighboring districts. Pompton had used them, Pompton Lakes had used them, and saw great success, and Little Falls had used them and seen great success. So we felt that that were 2 districts that mirrored us a little more for models that may work around size and demographics.
Sounds good. Now, I'm one of those, I have a high schooler, I'm one of those, he's one of my, one of those kids that had the learning loss. And the district can only do what the district can do at that point. Can we, as a district, point the parents that have the initiative to help their kids get caught up? Can we point them in the right direction as far as like additional help? That's actually something that also came up yesterday at the PTO at middle school. And, being one of those parents too, that, I know Xavier's hurting in certain subjects, rather than, just asking in Facebook,
Right.
maybe can we point them in the right direction?
I mean, that would be a great thing, and I think one of the things that we're restructuring, and not restructuring, but we're adding into, and I can speak to this at the K-5 level, that we're adding into the conferences is some of this multi-data that I talked about in the beginning, how we have multiple measures. And what we're trying to do is to have the classroom teachers in the conferences give a variety of data points to show with some of those suggestions. To say that that's being done 6-12, I can't speak to that or not speak to that, but it's something that we can inquire and discuss with, because I think that's right. Like sometimes people don't know where to go to fix this. And like you said, if you have the initiative to do it and you have the drive, what we are continuing to do at the middle school is what they call that twilight tutoring, which is, and we call it teacher on call, which we will start up again on after the New Year's, where we start to really do it here, is exactly that. We offer our own teachers in an after-school virtual model, because that's something that we took positive out of COVID, and we allow them to work one-on-one with students on an as-needed basis. You don't have to make an appointment, you just log on, you come, and we're there to help you, or help you with skills you don't know, or with homework you're struggling that night. So, something that we will note to see how we can continue that at the upper grades.
Thank you, and just glad to know that, with all the transitions we've had in personnel and whatnot, that you're consistently, part of the team, so
Thank you.
glad you're there.
You're
Yeah.
never leaving.
I'm not going anywhere, I swear.
Yeah, of course.
The only thing I'd like to add, and I want to thank Dr. Tribona for putting this all together. Obviously, any data is good for us, right? When we collect data, whether it's state testing, whether it's our in-house data, it's important. But I want to just, I want everyone to keep in mind that, these tests are a couple of days, right? This is not like a year-long thing or happens multiple times throughout the year. It's a couple of days that students sit down and take a test. This is one piece of, I always say it's one piece of a very large puzzle, right? It's a 180-day school year. This is a couple of days that kids are taking these assessments. And we have all of this other data that we're going to use to really give us a full picture of that child. So yes, this is important, what was shared, but it's one little piece of a very large puzzle that we look at when we talk about students. It's not just testing data, right? It's what they're doing in the classroom every day. It's our in-house assessments that we're using throughout the year. So, yeah, guys.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it'd be interesting to look, because we look at like 9th, 10th grade with the math and the scores, literally our proficiency scores were abysmal, but if we went back a couple of years and they were not great anyway, but we could do a correlation between that and where the kids go to school. They go to school to colleges that are just fine, or they go on to programs or secondary institutions that are just fine, and I think that fits to what Mr. Spirito says, that we don't want what we have to report on to define us. Even though there 100% are areas that we need to improve, we have to look beyond that, as it's just one data point and shouldn't define where our students are. Not that we don't need to improve it,
Right.
but there's more to the picture.
It's something we can use, absolutely, to help us grow, but it's one piece, right? There's many pieces that make up a student in our school district, right? It's not just one day that I look at Paul and we judge him based on one day, something he did on one day, right? So that's just something to keep in mind, that it's a, there's a lot to consider, a lot for us to look at. And yes, we have work to do, and I say it all the time, right? I sit here and say, we're never satisfied, we're always gonna try to improve and help our students grow. But that's a process that we look at the whole year, and all of the things that they are involved in throughout the year have to be considered, that's all.
And that's a great point, and, just to go back to it, I did reference my high schooler, and some of the test scores may not be where, you want them to be, but his soft skills, his social skills, they're through the roof, like getting him back into the building. So, yeah, I agree. It's something we need to work on, but the totality of it is there, so.
And not unique to Hawthorne. Again, they did adjust the test for anyone, all districts who take this, in New Jersey, because it's a New Jersey test, are seeing significant loss.
Just to piggyback on what Mr. Clavillo was saying too, with two daughters are in college, the SATs, they don't count anymore. So you can take them, you have to take them, but almost every single school, and it started with Ivy League schools at Harvard, they're all test optional. So although this testing is important, I think colleges are starting to get it where, I've heard exactly what Mr. Spirito said by colleges. What you get on a score taking the SATs 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday doesn't define you, and that's what the colleges really look at. They're looking at your family, they're looking at community service, and your scores in school. And most of them don't even look at the SATs anymore. So it's something that we have to do, and I know, we had talk about the strong test. You're about 2 weeks in school, and now you're taking a state test when the school year is just getting started, which everybody had to do. Take them for what they're worth, I guess is what I'm saying. And I think colleges have done a better job of that. That when I went to college, it was a formula, and if you didn't get this score, you didn't get into that school, and that no longer exists.
Thank you.
Curriculum and instruction, Mr. Reicher.
Thank you very much. And pursuant to the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Committee on Curriculum Instruction recommends the following resolutions. CI1 on page 3, CI2 through CI7 on page 4, CI8 through CI11 on page 5. On behalf of the committee, I so move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Reicher, seconded by Mr. Carr. Any discussion?
A couple questions.
Could I ask about the C1 Heroes and Cool Kids?
So that's a program, I mentioned that program so basically that's a program where our high school students will be going down and working with our sixth grade students. And they're gonna be, it's sort of like a mentoring type of program, but they go out to Bergen Community College and they participate in a training to then transfer that, or it helps them when they meet with their sixth grade partners of what they're gonna discuss and talk about with those students. So that's why they go out multiple times to Bergen Community College, and then they'll travel to Lincoln Middle School. I think it's 3 sessions at Bergen Community, and they travel down to Lincoln Middle School, and they'll be mentoring our sixth graders. So that's what that new program is.
That's great. I love the name too.
Yeah, it's a great program. I'm excited about it. It's new this year.
Yeah, fantastic. Also, CI-10, the special education tuition contract for 3 students in PCPI. Are those new students or?
No,
No?
it's just PCPIs, the regular ed students in May, I think we got the contract. And I have to call them to get this contract.
Is the pricing any different?
The same as last year.
And so why the differentiation there?
Because they're at a different tuition rate.
Yeah, it is higher for special ed
So
students.
special ed is high?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? I have 2 questions. Well, first one is a comment. For CI1, we removed the date column. Is that done on purpose?
Yes. I'll be honest, I don't want people knowing when our students are leaving buildings.
I understand that, but just for
So
our
that's
own
the
knowledge, like we're approving things that these could have happened already.
No, they typically are, we pre-approve, but I'm even give you the dates. I purposely took the dates off because I don't think it's a good idea to tell people.
I
in the
understand, I
community
respect that
when
from
our
a
kids are
security
leaving or-
standpoint. Sure. Maybe in the board folder, you could just put,
Yes, we
so
can.
that because we have post-approved things in the past, just so
Yes.
that we know for our own knowledge. And just this last one that was added this evening with the asterisk, the visiting various homes in Hawthorne, is that part of a program?
Yeah, so, student councils, they've done that for years. They do like toy drives and different things, and they actually deliver them.
Oh, okay.
So it's a student council program that they've been doing for years.
Okay.
And it's
I didn't know if it was
pre-organized, they don't just randomly.
Historical
walk around.
homes that
No,
we're
they don't
looking
just-
at, or?
They don't just randomly walk around, they designate certain places where they drop things off to certain families.
I respect the not telling people where, so I think that's a very smart security measure.
Yeah, we can have that, that's fine.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Clavijo,
Yes.
Ms. Erentraut,
Yes.
Mr. Racer,
Yes.
Mr. Tutaro,
Yes.
Mr. Carr,
Yes.
Mrs. Scott.
Yes. Personnel, Ms. Erentraut?
Thank you, President. The following resolutions are pursuant to the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools. P1 and P2 on page 5, P3 through P16 on page 6, P17 through P24 on page 7, and P25 through P29 on page 8. On behalf of the committee, I so move.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Erentraut, seconded by Mr. Totaro. Any discussion?
I have 2 things.
Sure.
I always am excited. I know there's always some changes going on, especially lately, but to welcome the new people to our team and to our district. And then second, I was also excited to see that we have a share advisor now. So I guess share is back, right? Or it didn't really
So-
leave. I don't know.
I have to tell you, I'm glad you brought that up. Yes, Share, we have a new Share advisor, it's not right. But I was just informed today that Share is actually, so Mrs. Atkinson Batista, former teacher, I actually had her back in school, I was in Hawthorne High School. She has created, she wanted to continue her work that she was doing while she was at Hawthorne High School. And she invited alumni to continue to be part of a Share program outside of the school district. My understanding is they have over 300 alumni who are now participating. So I met
I'm
with,
one of them.
okay, I met with Mr. Ward today, because he was the Share advisor before he retired. So it's just so nice to see that program it's in our school, and it's been there again, I participated in Share as a student.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it's a wonderful program, and the fact that it's continuing with our alumni now, they're looking to create a whole separate organization outside the school district. I think it's exciting, and I told Mr. Ward to just keep me updated about things that are happening.
I'll keep you updated.
Yeah, I'd love to be part of it as well. I'm a
Yeah,
former
it's such a
member of
great
Share.
group, like, for those who don't know, it's students of Hawthorne acting responsibly and effectively. And
Yes.
they do such great things. When I was a senior, it was during 9/11, and we adopted a firehouse in New York, and I'm still in touch with the people today, 20-something years later. It's such a cool experience, but just wanted to
I
make
think
it
it's
known.
wonderful.
Yeah, yeah, very cool.
Continuing.
I didn't realize you had Ms. Atkinson, because Cassie, my oldest, she graduated 2012, she loved Ms. Atkinson, and then it was Mr. Ward, but didn't realize the program had.
Oh, yeah, I was in Share as a student. It was wonderful. You know,
That's awesome.
great experience, and I'm just so excited to hear that they're continuing that work. It says a lot about the community, it really does.
Any other discussion? I would just like to say that I'm happy to see that the personnel pages have sort of settled down a little bit, and that we're back to, you know, maternity leaves and a few adjustments here and there. Love to welcome the new members of the Hawthorne family as well. And we'll take a roll call.
Ms. Arentrop?
Yes.
Mr. Reicher?
Yes.
Mr. Totaro?
Yes.
Mr. Carr?
Yes.
Mr. Clevino?
Yes.
Mrs. Cohen?
Yes. Mr. Clavijo, Finance and Administration.
Thank you, Madam President. First, we have donations. We have two of them. A, acceptance of a donation of $450 from Polder to the Student Council towards October 12th block party. This donation has been processed through the Hawthorne High School internal account. Thank you, Paul. And thank you for the donation for last month too, right? We had one on the agenda, so thank you very much. B, acceptance of a donation of dictionaries to each third grade student in the Hawthorne Public School District from the Hawthorne Rotary Club at a value of $900. Thank you to the Rotary Club. That's also a program that's been very long standing.
Every year, it's yes.
And so thank you to the Rotary Club. Action items. Pursuant to the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Committee on Finance and Administration recommends the following resolutions on page 9, F1 through F4. On page 10, A1 through A2. On behalf of the committee, I so move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Clavijo, seconded by Mr. Carr. Any discussion? Just like to echo the thank yous to you, Paul. That is a really nice way to give back to the community. The Fall Fest was amazing. I was there myself. We're very appreciative. Thank you.
You want to tell them what the donation was for?
Yes, I paid for half the petting zoo.
Aw.
I was determined to get that.
I enjoyed that baby cow very much. He was so cute. Oh, that was lovely. Well, now I'm even more appreciative. Roll call, please.
Mr. Reicher?
Yes.
Mr. Totaro?
Yes.
Mr. Carr?
Yes.
Mr. Clevino?
Yes.
Ms. Arentrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Cohen?
Yes. Ms. Arentrout, back to you for claims.
In accordance with the NJAC 6A:23-2:11B, C3, and C4, it is recommended that the board approve the bill list for the month of October 2022. CL1, approval of the October 2022 bill list. I read that backwards, but on behalf of the committee, I have reviewed the bills, and thank you to Cheryl. She's always available for any questions for all of us, so thank you, Cheryl.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Arentrout, seconded by Mr. Clavijo. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Reicher?
Yes.
Mr. Totaro?
Yes.
Mr. Carr?
Yes.
Mr. Clevino?
Yes.
Ms. Arentrop?
Yes.
Mrs. Cohen?
Yes. Mr. Carr, Buildings and Grounds.
Thank you, Madam President. Pursuant to the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the Committee on Buildings and Grounds recommends the following resolutions. BG1 on page 10, continued on to page 11, BG2, BG3, and BG4 also on page 11. On behalf of the committee, I so move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Carr, seconded by Ms. Arentrout. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Racer?
Yes.
Mr. Totaro?
Yes.
Mr. Carr?
Yes.
Mr. Clavijo?
Yes.
Ms. Erentraut?
Yes.
Mrs. Scott?
Yes. Mr. Carr, in light of Dr. Morell's absence, would you mind moving the policy items?
Sure. Pursuant to the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Committee on Policy recommends the following resolutions. P01 on page 12. On behalf of the committee, I so move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Carr, seconded by Mr. Totaro. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Excuse me, Mr. Totaro?
Yes.
Mr. Carr?
Yes.
Mr. Clavijo?
Yes.
Ms. Erentraut?
Yes.
Mr. Racer?
Yes.
Mrs. Scott?
Yes. Committee and liaison reports. Mr. Carr, staying with you
In the hot corner.
for buildings and grounds and legislation.
Thank you, Madam President. Buildings and Grounds met last evening at Hawthorne High School and went over a number of items. The referendum update, the trenching started at Jefferson School for the new generator. The high school science lab lights are now complete. All painting was completed, soundproof wallpaper was also completed in the band room. At the high school, new outdoor bleachers were delivered and are being installed currently. Hopefully will be completed by Friday afternoon.
Yes.
Friday
They're on
football
track to
game.
be completed, yes.
Compressors for the high school auditorium air conditioning have been installed. Through the Department of Education, the health and safety checklist was completed for the district for all schools, and the comprehensive maintenance plan has been completed for the district. That concludes my building and grounds report, and there's nothing on the legislative level.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Clavijo, Finance and Administration.
Thank you, Madam President. Finance met yesterday at the high school. A couple of the items on the agenda. FEMA application, which was placed back in September 2020, was finally resolved. Funds of $59,851 should be received by year's end. Also, it was reiterated that we are submitting a revision to the ARP ESSER application, omitting the HVAC upgrades and reallocating funds to instructional and support staff, as well as towards mental health services. As far as health benefits, the district they shopped around to see if there was any outside opportunities. And unfortunately, due to our claim experience over the past couple of years, we have no other options. So we will be staying with the state program, and the increase for this coming calendar year is going to be 15%. We also know that we have potentially 4 special ed district placements. Tuition and transportation cost is going to be determined. We also discussed the possibility of having a district-wide re-registration in summer 2023. It's been some time since we've had a district-wide re-registration. Preliminary budget, believe it or not, for the planning for 2023-2024 is going to take place already in November. Something that came up that wasn't on the agenda is the possibility of having a 75% reimbursement for HVAC work via a clean energy fund grant. The window to apply is small, and the funds have to be fronted for the repairs, which is the downside. The upside is that it can help us address some of our oldest units, including the one at the middle school, which is dates back to 1960, Jefferson Elementary, 1959, and Washington dates back to 1993. The other ones that are more recent are also early 2000s, so they're at least 20 years old. Because we would have to front the money, you have to figure out where is it that we would be able to pull it from. We do have $1.8 million that are available from reserves that we could utilize for the project. And the consensus was to discuss that tonight, to see what our fellow board members, how they felt about it. But that concludes my report.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Clavijo. We will discuss the HVAC during the business. Okay. Ms. Erentraut, Passaic County School Boards Association.
I just want to thank Marco for reporting last month for me. I appreciate it. And there's really nothing new for this month, so thank you.
Sure. For New Jersey School Boards Association, really only the convention, which I am very sad that I do not get to attend with those who are going this year. Please enjoy. Get all the free pens, all the free notepads, all the free swag that you can. It's really a lovely time Just unfortunately, being a teacher myself, I can't really take that time off to go, but I hope that you all enjoy. And I would like to remind everybody, namely myself, because every time I say it out loud, I need to internalize it. We all have to sign up for our own individual training by the end of the calendar year if you are in election year 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 10, etc. So I need to sign. At every new election, you have to sign up as well. So since I was just newly elected last year, I have to complete it before January. So I will remember to do that, and everybody else, if you need to do that as well. That is it. Dr. Morell is not here, Mr. Palouse is not here, Mr. Reicher, curriculum and instruction.
I will be going to Atlantic City. I'll bring you back some pens. and
Bragger.
Post-its.
Please do. I love Post-its and pens.
No problem. I don't know who else I'm gonna go to, so I'll go with you after I
Thank
get
you,
there.
and highlighters.
Okay.
Okay.
Highlighters. C and I did meet last night, 5:30 to 6:30. Here are some of the things that we talked about. First thing was a senior experience internship update from the high school. This is through the Bergen County Special Services. Right now we have 13 students participating in the program. 10 out of the 13 have been placed with jobs. Some examples of the jobs include WFDU radio, senior living, advanced auto parts, and much, much more. There was a whole list. 1 day a week they go to, that takes place where they go to those jobs. Point number 2, or second thing discussed, as you saw tonight, Dr. Tribona did a whole presentation on it. We got an overview last night of what you had seen earlier. Third thing discussed, October 10th, 2022, Professional Day. Everybody in the district had a full day of training. A couple of important points, 90% of the training was us turnkeying and training our own staff. Only 10% they brought in from the outside, which is amazing. Very successful day, and the groups had whatever department training they needed that applied to them. Fourth point, LMS Den Days. This is an advisory period with 4 to 6 students in the middle school. It's mixed grades 6 through 8 doing structured activities. They'll have a spring culminating activity for service learning. And this takes place once a month at the middle school. And DEN is not an acronym. I had to check that. It's just DEN. I thought it stood for something like everything else. It actually doesn't. Thank you, Dr. Tribona. It's DEN. So it's like, what does that stand for? She's like, is it DEN?
Bears. Bears Den.
Everything else is an acronym. It's just a DEN.
True though, everything is an acronym.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
It's true.
Thank you. It's just a DEN. And then we did get an update, which is fantastic, from the supervisors. So math and science supervisor, Bonnie Aschenbrand, she gave us an update, math, science, PCC partnership, and a year-long running Physics First program with Rob Zisk. A couple of highlights that she told us about was the partnership with Passaic County Community College started today. That's a college algebra class. 20 students are enrolled, 15 weeks, 2 times a week, 3 to 4:15. And that's through PCC. And the other PCC thing that you might have seen on the tours is the high-tech classroom also that they put in our schools, which was fantastic. And the year-long learning with Rob Sisk, I said last night, he's just not Rob Sisk from the street. He's from Rutgers University. He's like a well-known person who does this throughout the state and teaches the Physics First program. Then we had Ashley Smith, who's a humanities supervisor. She talked about writing, professional development. She's doing a monthly s'more newsletter. And she also did these lovely documents that many of you might have seen at the open houses on a software program called Canva, which is free, and the full program is free to educators. And she talked about different technology tools that they're starting to use. She also focused a lot of the conversation on writing and getting feedback on writing and doing something called a single point rubric, where you either have it or you don't have it instead of being like a 1 through 4. And she talked about tech tools, Nearpod, Padlet, Google Apps, all these different things that they're using, which is wonderful. And that's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Reicher. I look forward to those notepads and pens in my mailbox. Mr. Totaro, Council Liaison.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. As for my review of council meeting from October 5th, the following was shared by Mayor Lane in the administrative report. Hawthorne Day was a great success, and Mayor Lane thanked all the community members, vendors, and sponsors. The night ended with spectacular fireworks, and we are planning for the next year's Hawthorne Day to be on September 30th. Please save the date. We also went on to share about this second Hispanic Heritage Day, which took place on October 8th. It was a great event, and want to thank Mr. Sierra, Dr. Morel, Mr. Clavillo, and Mr. Danilo Ramirez for all their hard work to set up this event. And other than that, today is the last day to register to vote. I think they're open until 9 p.m., so if you haven't,
Leave now.
you may want to go downstairs. So, yes, or online until this evening. So thank you very much. That was my report.
Thank you, Mr. Totaro.
Stuff I do have CPAC and.
Oh, I'm
PTOs.
sorry. Okay.
Not that anything to report, but I've been around and
Sure.
been around these with the campaign on some of these PTO meetings more than once, so so very versed in what's happening with them. So LMS, they're having a clothing drive. You can drop off items up to tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. On the playground on the side door by the bike rack. They're having, staying back to LMS, they're having a fall festival this Thursday. Zeppeli, fried cakes, fried Oreos, ice cream, DJ photo booth. It's a $5 entry fee. This Thursday, 6 to 9 p.m. And on Friday, they have a give back with Hawthorne Diner. 15% goes back to LMS. That's Friday, Hawthorne Diner. Onto the high school. The high school is having a cannoli platter fundraiser due by November 4th, either via high school student or Robin Bryant. Washington School is having a trunk or treat Friday, October the 28th, 5:30 to 7 p.m. Roosevelt's having theirs on September the 29th, 12 to 3 p.m.
October.
Is it October? Oh, yes. I'm a month ahead. Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
So Jefferson, yeah, disregard police will report on that. CPAC, they're meeting remotely next Wednesday. HEF, they're having a mozzarella making night with Vinnie Moots, January 12, 13, and 19. Information is going to be coming out in the future for that, so.
Thank you,
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Clavigo. I can add a few things onto that, just from being members of the various PTOs as well. Look for a bake sale at both Hawthorne High School and Lincoln Middle School on Election Day. Sort of a neat way to raise funds. People will be going into the schools to vote anyway. Homecoming, I know Mr. Cerrito said homecoming is this Friday, and Cubs Appreciation Night is also this Friday. The Hawthorne High School cheerleaders are doing a bake sale at the game as well. I may or may not have made chocolates for the bake sale, so it'll be next to the snack stand to purchase, just to purchase. Many bake sales. Anybody else? No? Okay. Public be heard. At this time, members of the public may ask questions or make comments on educational issues or school matters. Please remember that upon being called on, you must rise, state your name and address, and limit your comments to 5 minutes in length.
Hello, how's everyone? Eric Colton, 236 Lafayette. I think all the elementary schools are doing bake sales for the election this year because we did attend all, except for Jefferson, all of the PTO meetings.
Smart.
And I think it's really smart. Why not sell to outside of just the PTO moms and members and make some money in the community?
Yeah,
It's
lots of
win-win.
foot traffic.
Make goods and money. Why not, right? Okay. I'll finish that. You guys are ready. Oh, I was gonna talk about Share and the Facebook group and some of the things that they're gonna be having for the graduated alum, not the in-school Share Club, although it's really nice Ms. Dockery's taking over. So I know that they're gonna be looking for donations for SoCo Rescue. And they're also going to be, so that could be monetary, or it could be like blankets. It's an animal rescue, a dog rescue, that's based in Georgia. They actually have a lot of puppy mills, and it's not really regulated. They don't have a lot of help, so they're one rescue in a really large area. And then they transport those animals once they're safe and, you know, vetted and spayed. All that's done, they transport them here to our area and adopt them out. So that's how we connected with them. So they always are looking for blankets or sheets or towels, you know, lots of that puppy stuff that they go through very quickly. And then I think also volunteers for Habit of Humanity for a project coming up. So if you don't have the funds, everyone has old blankets laying around and, you know, you can pick up a hammer to help out. So I had a quick question about state testing, and I don't even know if you can answer this. Is that okay?
Yeah.
If I ask a question about that?
Yeah, ask it here.
So, what? Yeah.
go ahead.
So, I know we have a small percentage of special education students that, due to their IEPs and testing, evaluations, that they don't necessarily take that test, they take something else called DLM, right?
Yeah, sure.
So what qualifies a child, a special needs IEP child, to be able to take a DLM test instead of the state assessment?
I can actually
I was
answer
gonna
that
say,
question.
Abby.
So throughout the IEP creation process, there is a page that you have to meet certain criteria so it's a checklist.
Right.
One of the criteria is, are you being taught using a DLM curriculum? So
Okay,
it's a separate curriculum in which it's really tailored, I mean heavily tailored to
Right.
student need. There's a very small population of students that take the DLM, like 10, 11, 15.
I think it was exactly 15.
Yeah. So
okay.
the criteria are, you know, do you use the regular curricula for, and it goes over ELA, math, science. If the answer is no, then you can go to the next box. Do you use a DLM curricula? If the answer is yes. So there's about 4 or 5 questions on the DLM.
That a child study team member would go through.
That is part of an
Right.
IEP.
Yeah.
That's determined when the IEP is created.
So is that according to state laws or is it us? Who's deciding that criteria? I guess is my question. Sorry, I don't think I'm saying this the right way.
The IEP team makes that determination.
So it's not the
But it's in
state
code.
saying
Well,
the child, like what if a child has a low cognitive eval, but in an LLD class, like they're still, I don't know how to ask this a different way, I'm sorry.
I could jump in, so their classification puts them in a program and their program
Right.
drives that. So basically programmatically, it's your lowest program, which for us is our Steps and Arch, and it's only a percentage of those students. So some of the class of our Steps and Arch still
Are
takes the
still
NJ
taking it.
SLA, and then our lowest cognitive ability, who are taught
I
using
see.
more of our ABLES model
Yep.
and our trial-based,
Yeah.
discrete trial-based are the ones who take the DLM.
Okay.
Yeah, our ADA model.
I never knew about that, and I'm a special education teacher, but on the pre-K side, so I don't
Yeah.
deal with state testing, but I just know as a parent that those come in the mail every year, and I rip them up, and I'm sorry, it's not the whole picture,
I agree.
but I'm a gen ed student, I didn't have an IEP or learning disability that I know of, but when it came to state testing, I bombed every time, and I just think for our kids who are struggling and behind already academically to see those, whether they did okay, mediocre, or bombed, it's just not good for them, their confidence level in a time where that's kind of hard to begin with. So I was just curious, having a child with an IEP, what qualifies, how they could take a different type of test. Because it must feel really yucky sitting at that computer. And again, this is not you guys, this is state testing, I understand that. Not knowing any answers. It's like, for my child, reading a different language. I don't know how else to say that, but 2 days of it, and I can see him come home and look like he was run over by a truck. And it's just not, it's not fair for many of our kids, right? Kids who are ELL learners. We have all types of learners, so I just think, I just wanted to clarify what that was, so I appreciate it. I like your idea of not putting dates on field trips, although I understand what the president is saying.
No, I understand.
But I think in this day and age, I was that parent, first day of school when Facebook first came out, posting pictures of my child with their name and the date and what school they were at, and I'm so proud and blah, blah, blah. And then I realized what I was doing and the possible danger I was putting my kids in, so not knowing where they are and what date is wonderful. And then I just wanted to say, my sister's on here and I didn't even know it. She is going to be in a
Chat.
classroom.
Hope to have a chat with her.
It is. She didn't even tell me. Like, she knows I'm running. She knows I'm here for League One, and she didn't even tell me. She's so funny. So congratulations to her. And then one more thing. There was progress reports came out. So basically, at this point in time, we're only getting progress reports for middle school students. Elementary doesn't get them
Well, elementary doesn't get them in the first market period because of conferences.
because our conferences.
Yes,
Correct.
there's
Sorry.
conferences coming up.
And high school does not get them anymore.
So what the high school told the teachers, and I
Okay.
can tell you that I saw the email that went out, was that they sent an email to parents to ask them to check the portal, but they
Yes.
also told the teachers
Okay.
that if there's a child who is struggling, that the teacher needed to contact those parents, whether it's in writing or a phone call.
Not through a progress report through real time, but privately.
Right.
Okay.
Just to reach out to those students who are struggling.
Okay.
You know, that they should, and if you weren't, then I would contact the school and let them know that. But
Okay.
I can tell you that that was communicated to our staff at the high school.
Okay. Okay. I got an email, they went out, and I know a couple other parents too went right on, and they weren't available. And then tonight I can see them, but I couldn't see them at the time of the email. But then I realized I don't have them for two of my kids, so maybe I messed up somewhere and didn't realize that they weren't available for elementary and high school. I kind of forgot, so I understand.
Elementary, you'll get them later in the year, but
Right, when we meet with them.
conferences, they use that as the
Yep, conference
progress
time.
report,
Okay.
which is coming up, as you know.
So I think that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Erica.
Good evening, board. Thank you so much. My name is Dan Ramirez, 91 Ruth Avenue. So the first thing I'd like to do, please, is thank you eternally as the Hawthorne Hispanic Heritage Chairman, and to Mr. Tatero's point, to the superintendent, to the administrators of all the schools, to the band teacher, and to the Spanish teacher. Thank you so much. You really helped spread the word and make our event really meaningful to Hawthorne, so thank you so much. The second thing is I'd like to really thank Dr. Trebona for such a great presentation. I was really, really impressed. On a side note, with all these state testing and the GPA, the SL, all the testing, it's a little bit disheartening to know that this time, instead of teaching to a test, can't be more for more passionate learning for the kids. It's just a side note, and I know it's something we have to do. But that being said, particularly to Mr. Clavigo's point, this is a question, I guess, for Dr. Cabona. I know a lot of districts, and he, all hands on deck as much as we could for all the schools, for all the students. I'm familiar with something called a SIOP training, which is Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol. It has 8 components. It has lesson strategies, interaction, lesson delivery, etc. Not sure if that's what Dr. Trebona was referring to when she was saying how some of the 6 to 12 faculty was going to be instructed. I know it's very intensive. You have at least, I think 21 hours of instruction. So I was wondering, there's another component to that, which is slot training, which is repetition protocol. Pretty much, you present the material 28 days, 48 days, and you repeat the material for the students. Was just wondering if that's something that she was gearing towards?
Yes, so the 3-day training that I was talking about from BJ Prince and the language literacy assessment model is sheltered instruction. It used to be called SIOP, is like the brand name. So we are doing the sheltered instruction model, but it's just, we don't call it SIOP because the company we're working with doesn't coin the term SIOP. So it is the sheltered instruction. It's 3 intensive days, 7-hour days, which is your 21 hours. Which brings us back multiple times to immerse them in how they should be immersing with their students when they're mainstreamed in the classroom.
And that's fabulous. I've heard really, an educator of 20 years in administrative liaison, I've heard a lot of great things about that. So I'm really happy to be part of the Hawthorne and the kids to put that, set that program up. So thank you to Dr. DeBona and thank you to the board.
Okay.
Can I say one? I forgot something. I'm sorry. It'll be really quick. Do I have to sign in again?
No.
Because I know Mr. Palouse isn't here, so the Bear Cave is open for lunch next week. You can call or order ahead, or you can reserve a spot. It's limited.
Yes.
Thank you, Erica. Forgot about that. Seeing as no one else is approaching, general comments and questions from the board related to the school district.
I have one. Paul, thank you so much for joining us and for your report. Welcome aboard, and we look forward to being here with us all year. So thank you.
Should we go around the room?
Yes, sir.
Might as well. All right. So a couple things. One, I already put my order in for chicken fajitas. Thank you for reminding us. And in all sincerity, I really appreciate both the strategic planning and coming out to see all the referendum work at the high school. It really was nice to see such a huge group of individuals participate specifically in the strategic planning. I know that's something that I personally have been trying to emphasize. I know a lot of the other board members as well, to try and get everybody to come out and just be a participant in what that strategic plan looks like for the next 5 years. So it was really nice to see. I mean, it was a really, I think it was 60+ people.
First session.
Yeah, I mean, it was really nice to see and have that kind of involvement. So I really appreciate it. And also, Paul, nice to see you here.
Thank you.
So I want to welcome student rep, author, I got my book signature, and district benefactor, Paul Durr. Also, our PCC partnership, my son is one of those taking the algebra class in the high-tech classroom. It was the first day, so awesome. It's just great all around. And also want to thank superintendent administrators for opening the high school for that community open house on Columbus Day. It was well received, and thank you for making yourself available.
Happy to do.
To Mr. Danilo's point, specifically to thank Mr. Duran and Ms. Gomez for all their assistance, for the high school store for making their merchandise available, and the launch event for starting off the event that Saturday for us. So, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Rubio. Mr. Reichert?
Sure, I have a couple things. For state testing, you're going to the wrong place to complain.
I know.
Like, it's Trenton that makes the test, and go to the Department of Education in Trenton, because we're just following, what they're telling us to do. A popular picture that I have is a picture of a Scantron test, and it's written on it, it says, "This test does not define me," which I think for a lot of students is very true, that I'm not a good test taker either. I have 2 master's degrees in education. It means nothing, the testing. And finally, go vote. What do they have, 20 minutes? 18 minutes to register?
Yes.
But please make sure November 8th, it is important to vote for whatever candidate you would like to vote for the school board, and I hope we get a good turnout on November 8th.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome our new student representative, Paul Durr, Renaissance man. And I also like to thank you for donating your student representative salary for the...
He gets paid,
Where was that? We approved that.
I'd also like to thank Dr. Tribona for her informative presentation this evening. Thank you very much. And that I'm a man sitting on my own island here tonight. I too was a member of SHARE, and I'd like to give a shout out to Patty Atkinson-Batista to know that you are still impacting the community after almost 40 years is a testament to the individual that you were, and you were probably one of the most impactful teachers that I had here at Hawthorne High School.
I would just like to, even though we were not fond of state testing, I'm going to say something in support of the PSAT. I would like to thank the district for making a commitment to offer the PSAT to 10th and 11th graders. That is not something that has always been the case. When Mr. Reicher and I and Mr. Cluvio first joined the board a decade ago, they were not administering it here, and we fought for that to be something that the district covered. For those who may not know the importance of the PSAT, in 11th grade, those scores are used to determine National Merit Scholarship. And that is a financial aid assistance that you can get based on those scores. So that is something that I think is a tremendous service to families in this community. It is at no cost to them. We cover the cost in both grades. In 10th grade, it's a practice, and in 11th grade, it's the real thing. And again, those scores are used to determine National Merit Scholarship. So it's super important to us as a board that we provide that opportunity. Additionally, the SAT being offered in town, that was not something that was happening a decade ago, and something that we fought hard for. We wanted to remove every barrier for students. They were having to go to other towns to take it, to classrooms that weren't familiar to them, parking lots that weren't familiar to them, administrators that were not familiar to them. So again, thank you to this board and this administration for committing to remove barriers so that our students have access to those things that don't seem like big deals, but when I tell you it was an uphill battle a decade ago, it was an uphill battle. Just to provide the opportunity for them. I know state testing does not, standardized testing is not the end all be all, but for the students that want those opportunities, I stand firm, we stand firm if they deserve those opportunities. That being said, I will move on to new business. I would like to start with the HVAC conversation. Mr. Clevio, I'm not sure if you want to reframe it again, just to give a little more detail about what was discussed last night in Finance and Administration.
Sure, so there are some units that need to be replaced, right? They're very old. Cheryl had looked into, right back in February, you had inquired about it?
I contacted the Clean Energy program back then, but they didn't have funds available, and they rearranged, I guess, their budget and announced, we just found out last Thursday, that funds are available. The majority of the funds are available for underserved districts, which makes the pot of money that is available very competitive and on a first come, first served basis. So what we discussed in part is that the district needs to basically front the majority of the money and seek reimbursement, which makes it a little bit challenging because each of the main units is $667,000.
That's it?
So
That's for heat and AC.
So the one unit at LMS, as you mentioned before, I think is 1960. The one at Jefferson is 1959. So well past their lifespan. We had originally thought perhaps that we would be using some of our ESSER money for that. And after discussions last month, decided that those funds need to stay with mental health and the improvements for the BSI and the multisensory reading. So we're looking for other ways to try to fund it. The program that's offered offers up to 75% reimbursement. As I said, the big issue is that we would have to basically front the money, and I have no idea how long it may or may not take to get reimbursed. As we see with the FEMA, right? It took over 2 years. I don't think it would be that, but it's a process. So it's just a matter of how comfortable the board is with how much of the capital reserve we would basically be encumbering at the cost of other projects potentially.
Is that guaranteed reimbursement?
Well, so it's an application process. I mean, we could go through this whole process and not get approved. But I
And we
think
don't know if they'll do partial approval. Like if we submit for 4 buildings and they say no, we'll cover 2, like those questions we don't have answers to yet.
So my thing, a couple things, right? So one is, this is an opportunity we normally wouldn't have, right, by having this grant in place. So right off the bat, that there's interest there. How long do they give you kind of a turnaround with the completion application is? Or my only concern is obviously it's a huge risk, right? Submitting that and not getting any kind of guarantee.
Well, I think the application process itself, we have to get an assessment, an engineer has to sign off on the costs. So there's a little bit of a process. We have some of it done because we were starting the process when we were thinking about using the ESSER money. But I'm working with our architect and engineers to see where we are in that whole process. I think the biggest issue from my perspective is how much, if we were successful getting approval, how much are we willing to commit, right? Because to do the the main unit at each one of the schools, I think the total came out to about $3.1 million, which is more than, obviously, our capital reserve. So we don't have that money to front. There's really not a lot of ways the Board of Ed can borrow. Usually when you borrow for capital, you issue a bond, or, you know, there's some potential issues that you can borrow against state aid that's delayed or something of that nature, but not typically for something like that.
But is there a stopgap in the sense that we can do the application, try to go for the process, still concurrently working on our own to get everything in place, and then if if it doesn't pass or we're not getting the 75% or a good portion of that, just not perform the work? Is that?
I think that's, you wouldn't go far. You wouldn't issue purchase orders, you wouldn't go any further. So you would have the out-of-pocket expense of the assessment. As I said, we've already pretty much done that.
I just think based on that, you know, is that, you know, it may be worth the reward of at least putting the application in and then awaiting the outcome, but not proceeding without.
Absolutely. I think the question that I had was how much is everybody comfortable with? Putting an application in for, say, 3 units, the 3 oldest units, which would be LMS, the one at Jefferson and the one at Washington. Maybe doing LMS with the AC and doing the other 2 not with AC, which would lower that price a little bit, especially if we're not going to have air conditioning at Roosevelt.
Can we, let me rephrase that line, I'm sorry. But
That's how you wanted to bring it. The buildings and grounds perspective is very important.
So if we were, perfect world is we get 75%, right? Would we be able to afford then all the other schools, the remaining balance?
You still have to pay for it all up front.
Understood, so no matter what, the problem is the upfront cost.
And you have to
We don't have
complete
the
the work.
upfront costs for all the schools.
The work
We
has
just
to be
don't have that money
completed within
available.
1 year of the application. So again, that's also a small obstacle because it's primarily summer that we can conduct that kind of work.
So no matter what, we're strong on to make a decision on one or.
Yeah. So
In essence, yes.
just to give you like a snippet of the conversation, because we talked about this last night over and over. So originally it was 3 buildings, HVAC,
The oldest 3.
the oldest 3.
The oldest one.
That's what we're talking
Two of those 3 being elementary schools. So it was brought up, is this a phase 1? Would we eventually do the 3rd elementary school, would we follow suit as a phase 2? If, you know, the public will want to know. And that really doesn't seem like the case. Roosevelt and the high school have units that are newer, 2000. They're still 23 years old, but they're newer. So it doesn't sound like that's in the foreseeable future. So that made the committee somewhat uncomfortable in that one elementary school would not have it and the other 2 would. So then it became, maybe we don't do the AC portion for the 2 elementary schools, we do it just for the middle school. Then we even tossed around maybe doing AC for the high school because that is a place that is commonly used for community events. And so there's a bunch of different scenarios. It's $337 for just the HV unit and $667 for HVAC.
So then the finance committee, the consensus was that we felt comfortable in pursuing it, but obviously it's a board decision at that point, right? Because the flip side of it, because then you can work out the numbers, which school gets, which school you do it, what the dollar amount is. But the flip side of the risk of not attempting it is that what if one of these units goes bad on us, we don't have the funds to address it, and you have an opportunity here to get, in essence, free money that you may or may not need to go forward with it if you don't get the approval. It doesn't make sense to pass up on an opportunity like that. And I think once we have the consensus that the board feels that that's the way we should proceed, then we could fine tune how much and what building gets what.
Because Cheryl has to write a very specific proposal for which buildings, which types of units, and we can't just say.
Keep it open-ended. It's gotta be
No.
Alex,
specific.
I just have, or whoever can answer this, but the capital reserve, like what exactly is that money for, and how much do you know how much we have in capital reserve?
We have just over $1.8 million in capital reserve right now. Capital reserve is typically used for replacement of fixed assets. So, as I was saying last night, if you replace a couple ceiling tiles, it's easy. But if you replace the entire ceiling grid and the tiles, it becomes capital. So a bigger project, a bigger,
The reason why-
something like the HVAC would become a replacement.
The reason why I asked it that way is 337,000 times 3 schools that have something that's 63 years old. And that's why I was asking what that money is used for. It might be worth to do it, and if you had 10%, 15%, 20%, like 63 years old
Yeah.
is ridiculous. Like, all that I'm saying is, a perspective to look at it is, what if we get 0% of the money? Well, something is still 63 years old. That's why I was asking what the capital reserve is used for. And a positive way to look at it, we fill out the application, well, we got 15%, we got 20%. Something that's 63 years old is gonna break anyway. It can't be functioning well anyway. That's why I was asking what the capital reserve, the function of that money is for. I'm just saying, if you look at it that way, you don't necessarily look at should we do it? Because we might get 75% back. It's we have to do it. If that's what this money is allocated for anyway, maybe do it with the 3 oldest places with the heat and not the AC, and then whatever you eventually get back, you get back, but you're not relying on that money. I don't know a lot about the budget, that's why I was asking about the capital reserve.
Sure, that $1.8 million, it's not specifically earmarked for anything at this moment, right?
Correct.
It's just sitting in an account at this point.
Can you just clarify the AC portion? We're not air conditioning the whole school.
Well, each of these units that we're talking about is really just in the gymnasium or in the cafeteria of the various schools. So it's a larger common area space. It wouldn't benefit one particular classroom. It would benefit everybody within that school. And as I said before, my major concern is the age and how long we can continue to repair a 60-year-old unit. So.
Rumor has it we have generous benefactors.
All fire up the checkbook.
Buy more books. Or
I'm gonna buy reads too. I think.
If you did 3 units and not the air conditioning and just the heating, my math is not that good, but that's about $1 million, and you would still have $800,000 left over.
Last night, the final consensus was the bottom, our most comfortable option, the committee, and I'm speaking, Alex, please correct me if I'm wrong, was that we did LMS, HVAC, and Jefferson HV at a minimum. And that was about $1 million as well. Those two are the
What was it again? LMS?
LMS HVAC at 667 and Jefferson HV at 337. Those are the 1960 and 1959 units. Washington is 1993.
I'm sorry, Jefferson was HVAC only?
HV only.
No AC.
No.
Because if we don't intend on doing it in the other 2 elementaries, we didn't feel comfortable promoting that as something. If it was a phased plan, we would.
What was the uptick for doing both systems?
About $1 million.
Well, it's 337 for the 2 elementary and 667.
Oh yeah, and well,
So up front, you would have to front the money, and then we would be responsible for any portion.
No, I'm just getting at, my personal opinion is if we're gonna do it, I would wanna consider, obviously, the option of doing both systems for the unit. It seems kind of,
So then the challenge was, do you do one elementary school and not the others?
And then
If it's
2
not-
elementary.
well, no, that's why I was asking, what is the uptick to do both systems at,
So it was, what was it, it was 3
An
something
additional
versus
330,000.
oh.
It's 667 for HVAC and 337 for HV only. So it's an additional 330,000, which is why, that's why there was a lot of discussion last night. It is, right. Seems odd, because I don't know, but I feel like it's maybe 1 unit. I don't know anything about this, but it just seems like a very
That seems,
large.
yeah, I think that's very.
Yes, and that's why to me, to us, it didn't necessarily, it wasn't an easy decision to just do all 3 buildings, all HVAC.
And there's no way, I know this is all over the place right now. I think the consensus is something, right, to take advantage of it, what that something looks like.
Yeah.
But my thing is, just from my experience, I'm still not convinced that doing both systems would be double the cost.
And it's 1 room, right? But you're.
I'm just saying, normally these dual systems, there's value, and that's the reason why you do it that way, and so I feel like I want to explore that more, if that was
And
an option.
Cheryl does have, she has a spreadsheet of numbers that,
The architect.
the architect has put together with
That was
prices,
priced out, right?
yeah,
This-
that we can certainly share if you
That's what
would
the
like.
architect provided
Oh.
to us, whether that,
Can you pass this down to us?
yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the other question to think about is how much are we spending on these units that are 63 years old to keep repairing them? Is that cost? I don't know.
So, I mean, you know, we could, I think we have to consider the 2 HV units then, at least.
When's the application due by?
Well, as
Well,
soon
it's
as
all on a
possible.
first come, first served basis.
So
So-
ASAP.
Yeah, so I mean, now that someone who's in the field thinks that possibly the number doesn't sound right, I mean, maybe we just consider the 2 HV units?
Even if the number was off, you're back to the point of, are you gonna phase in all the other schools? Even if the other number was only $100,000 more, are you gonna do one elementary school and not do the
But
others?
the answer, I think, was no.
Right, regardless of what that cost is. And so I think it's a futile point.
The process though on the numbers is gonna be the assessment and the engineer will sign off and then we'll do the application. But before anything happens, it has to go out to bid. So that's when you're gonna get your true number.
I would agree with that. I just think from from the material standpoint, it's just, I'm not convinced on what, this seems very vague.
Inflated, you
Yeah,
think?
well, I just think this is a budgetary number and not necessarily a true depiction, because it's just $250,000 more, they're saying for the HVAC versus just the standard heating ventilation unit. So I just,
And then look, like the service fees are barely anything more, it doesn't make sense. I worked for an HVAC company, but
I think it's worth exploring, for sure. I think to your point, I mean, I definitely, I think we'd have to concentrate the efforts on LMS and Jefferson, if that's the case, just based on the sheer age.
Sure.
But then at that point, you know, you're looking at, if you go all in, then you're looking at a $1.3 million or $1.4 million number, right? With, if we didn't get any grants.
But see, I think the challenge was that if you're gonna, even if the number was marginal, if it was, you know, if it was like a no-brainer to do it, if you're not gonna phase all the other elementary schools with the air conditioning, you know, why single, you know, why give?
Oh, I get what you're saying. So this way you'll now have, okay, understood.
PTO meetings happen in that gym. Parents will know that one gym is air conditioned and the others
Oh,
are
we'll have a
not.
war on our hands. Yes.
So regardless of what that number ends up being.
So then we just concentrate the efforts back to just
The
the HVs, the HV units.
I mean, Lincoln, there's the argue that all children cross through there at some point in time.
Well,
All children who see
do
the
we,
district.
yeah, I mean, then this way you just do the HV in the elementaries and do the both in elementary.
That's what we were thinking.
That was what was discussed last
Yeah,
time.
The
okay, I see what
two-
you're saying, yeah,
yeah.
I would agree with that.
But again, if we get 0% back, isn't this what the capital reserve
Well,
is for anyway?
Yes, but the whole point of this was that you're gonna get 75% of this money back.
No, I understand.
So,
I'm just saying,
now,
but you're
we
taking
could
the risk.
apply, and they could come back and say, sorry, you got nothing.
And you don't wanna wipe out that account either.
Right, you also don't wanna
You
drain
wanna
this
have
account,
some
you have
buffer
to have a
there.
little money.
No, I know.
Yeah, so
But
it's-
if they came back and said, you don't get anything, we wouldn't necessarily do any of the projects today.
Right.
But it has to be on everybody's radar.
Yes.
The age of these units.
This is
And
just
that
an
these
opportunity.
are, at some point, gonna need to be addressed. So I think we need to just start planning that.
Yeah, this is just an opportunity for us to
Is it what?
get some money back and
Yes,
not
well,
yeah,
fund the
and
whole
all
thing.
No, I think it's,
And so the gym would too.
So I will
Yeah.
work with Solutions and the engineer to do an application then for LMS, HVAC,
I think, yeah,
and just the heat for
Jefferson.
Jefferson and Washington, or just Jefferson? The 2 oldest or the 3 oldest?
Or do you wanna just do, I don't know.
I have another question. Does it say the term of this availability for the reimbursement?
It's
Is
on a
it like,
first come, first served basis.
and is it like 1 year could?
You have
could it
to
be
use the
ongoing
funds
or-
within a year of the project approval,
Okay.
which creates a problem, right? So I called the state and I said, these are projects that have to be done in the summer. So theoretically, if this was approved in December, just for argument's sake,
Yeah,
last year we ordered our rooftop unit in February and it's still not here.
yeah.
So even with a 6-month extension, that would only bring me to the following June. I need a summer to actually get work done. So I think that the state understands the supply chain
Just
issue. I don't think the program is devised to be a gotcha kind of a thing. But that said, they have these rules in there that are a little stringent for a school. Because this program is also for small businesses. And so for a small business, it might make sense, but for a school, it's challenging.
It's a new program, like, I get, there's so many unknowns, like, could it be renewed again next year?
Well, it could be. I mean, this was offered
Yeah,
last
it's over,
year.
right.
We just
Right.
found out.
Yeah.
This was offered last year. I contacted them last year. The funds had already been
Yeah.
allocated. And nothing further was available at that point when I contacted them. And then, as I said, they readjusted their budget and they made more funds available right now. So it is something I think that it's prudent to take advantage of, at least the application process. We can communicate throughout the process. Hopefully fine tune the numbers a little. But I just wanted to get a pulse of how comfortable everybody is with, because you are going to need the majority of the capital reserve.
And remember, they just reimbursed us with FEMA from 2 years ago.
My only concern about adding Washington as well is obviously, my thought process was just on the age, right? Just solely on that alone. I'm just concerned if we, as much as I want to say Washington too,
Yeah.
it's 93.
Right.
I don't
It's only
think that's
7
It's 7
as,
years.
7 years newer than the other
Newer than the
schools.
others,
You know?
yeah.
Or older.
Then we're also not taking all of our capital reserves, so we have something, God
Yeah.
forbid.
Agreed.
So like, most emergent right now.
I think LMS.
And then if we get 75% back, and either A, can do it again,
can
or
choose
B,
that on
have
our
to
own.
do it on our own.
That's fair.
All right.
How's this side feel? You guys have been quiet. Mr. Island man?
What did these three people say?
You've been so quiet.
He's just happy to
Taking
yank
it all in.
Taking it all in?
You know, I agree. I think you have to leave something there. God forbid there's,
Yeah.
you know, a worst case scenario. But to your credit, yeah, I mean, the largest student population goes through the middle school.
It's tricky because we're a school, so we don't have a large pool of money who we can just pay for things with, or a credit card we can put this on. So that it kind of seems like a weird, Alex's, we're putting it on Alex's
No,
credit card?
Paul's.
Oh, Paul's, okay. It just sounds like a weird, Mr. Clinton.
I just ordered his books on Amazon.
You can go on my website and then you can fund this HVAC program. I'll put a GoFundMe.
So do we feel comfortable with
That's the way to go.
the full
Lincoln
HVAC
Jefferson?
for Lincoln
Full
and,
game.
and
Yes.
the Jefferson heating?
Yes.
I will let you know.
Okay. Well, good luck with that. Any other new business?
Yeah. Sorry to make it a little
Oh, go
longer.
ahead.
So my new business is on the November 11th, right? I'm gonna read this because I want to get it all out. I was originally elected almost 10 years ago on April 2013. Coincidentally, it turned out to be the last time Hawthorne Board of Education elections were held in the spring. The biggest incentive to move the election to November was to not have the public vote on the budget. The increase stayed at 2%. The cost savings and the additional voters pool were touted as the added benefit. The election cost savings, from my recollection, ended up being like $25,000, and the additional voters never really materialized. Again, from my recollection, those that originally sided with it, like our now defunct town paper, recanted its support for it. Voters do not necessarily vote all the way through the ballot. I was one of the 2 dissenting votes on moving the election from April to November. For starters, I did not think there was enough mental bandwidth to process all the elections that can take place in November, including presidential, midterm, state, county, and local elections. However, my main reason for voting against it was the potential of having the elections become partisan. The mere fact of having a partisan candidate lawn sign next to a Board of Ed candidate, I thought had its implications. Interesting enough, today the North Jersey paper ran an article titled, "Has Rochelle Park School Board Race Become More Partisan?" it could, enlarge the trend. The article goes on to read, there is no law that specifically prohibits Board of Education candidates from being endorsed by political party, though no political party designations can appear on a school ballot election. It should be noted, the article continues, that the Commissioner of Education is traditionally frowned on political party endorsements of school board members, as school elections should be nonpartisan. The New Jersey School Boards Association wrote in a question and answer segment on its website. With the change, the article continues, by many boards of education to a November election, New Jersey school boards has seen an increase in political party endorsement and mayor and council member endorsements. Article finishes at that point. If this is going to be the new normal for Board of Ed elections, I would like to caution that it's more cumbersome, intricate, and costly to run an independent campaign. As is, it has always been challenging to recruit quality candidates to a no payroll that gets touted as a thankless one. I share this with my fellow board members, as all, with the exception of Bruce and Abby, knew a world where the Board of Ed elections were not in November. While it's not a simple decision with all the implications, a board resolution is all that it takes to move the election back to April, and I'm just sharing it as food for thought.
Thank you, Bud. Any other new business? I would like to say that we got a lot of love at the board table at Hawthorne Day. Many people still reaching out to me about where they can purchase barricade merch. I did speak with Mr. Sprito briefly about possibly teaming up with local businesses to see if they would host barricade merch, like Olson's, mutually beneficial. So we will continue to brainstorm ideas, or someone else had suggested that the days when food is picked up from the barricade for lunch, they have a merch table out then. So I still advocate for those ideas, because I think that it's just wonderful for the community to wear the merchandise, and it's wonderful for the students to see them wearing the merchandise and make the merchandise. So anything we can do to support that.
Waiting for, they're out, they sold out.
Well, we sold everything we had that day.
That was all they had.
Okay,
So
when
they're
they get new
sold out.
stuff,
So they're working on it, they've ordered material and they're working on it.
we will find a place
Some
for them
new
to
stuff,
sell it,
yeah.
because it's really such an asset to the
They're
community.
working on it.
Would they ever do like or they might do they have like an online like store, or they
So
always?
here's
I know they always
here's
do
the thing, and listen, I appreciate everyone who supported that table. We made a lot of money for the barricade, but you got to remember they don't do that all day every day, right? So it's just something they do as part of the program. So now that they're sold out, they have to order new material, they have to organize it, and then they have to reprint it. But it takes a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks to go through that process, because the kids do it, right? They have to determine what they're going to order, sizes, color, so it's part of what they do, but it's not something that they're just, pumping out merchandise every day. So again, I appreciate everybody's support, I really do, and it's wonderful that everybody wants their stuff, but it just takes them time. So once they have new stuff, they will let us know, and be happy to put it out at their
Like
cafes.
we can't have their food day canceled because they're making shirts.
The new blue.
Well, that's it. I mean,
No,
that's
you
exactly
said,
my
like
point,
all
right?
parts of the other programs.
It's just
No, I
another one
understand.
piece of what they do. So.
Yeah, I get it.
It's a great program, we're very,
It
very
is
thankful
wonderful.
for
It's
it.
fantastic.
Any old business? No? Okay, we will not have any private session. Before I take a motion to adjourn, I would like to reiterate what Mr. Reicher said and what Mr. Clavio said. It is our responsibility to go out and vote. Before you do, I hope you educate yourself on who you're voting for. I know that my fellow board members and candidates in the audience have been to many different places. If you haven't had a chance to see them there, they all have independent Facebook pages. There's ways to get information about them. This role up here is super important and very difficult at the same time, not to be taken lightly. It's just really important that you educate yourself before you vote. And that is November 8th. The polls are open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. 8 p.m. if you don't know your polling location, you can go on to the NJ. The county website has a division of voter tab, and you can click there for it.
And buy something at the big sale.
Buy something at all the big sales.
Abby, can I add something?
Sure,
to that?
go
Sorry to
ahead.
interrupt. I know that the county is still looking for poll workers, and the law changed last year. If you're 17, you can now sign up to be a poll worker
Interesting.
for $300 a day. It's a long day, but it's,
Wait, what day is that?
I've never done
That's
it.
money you can give back.
Yeah, I've never done it, but I know that the county.
$300.
About working our kids.
No, but it's an opportunity that sometimes people don't know about. So just to share it with the community, you can sign up online, you can look it up at the county, and you're off from school that day anyway. I don't know who wants to do it, but just so people know that
Thank you.
it's available. Yeah.
And also, I know Mr. Sprito said it, but the final strategic planning meeting is November 1st at 7 p.m. in room 123 of the high school. It is the culminating meeting in which we will be formalizing the goals that we put forward as a part of the plan. Anyone who participates in any of the meetings will be listed in the document. It is an actual document that gets published. Any students that come can put it on resumes, can put it on college applications, tell your friends. We really value student input. We've had one student who's come to both of them, and it's been, you know, a really unique perspective that I know that it competes with band and sport practices and other things, but it's a unique opportunity, and we are committed to seeing it through. So please come to the final meeting so that you can be part of the process. Doesn't matter how many others you came to, if you come to one, your name's in the document. Okay, I'm gonna take a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Totaro,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Carr. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Clavio?
Yes.
Mr. Arntrell?
Yes.
Mr. Reicher?
Yes.
Mr. Totaro?
Yes.
Mr. Carr?
Yes.
Mrs. Scott?
Yes. Have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.